everyone's been talking about the feral children in Sephora with no manners, well, it's also happening at the movie theater.
And I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like Generation Alpha skipped their awkward phase and grew up way too fast. I don't know, Gen Alpha scares me a little bit.
Kids used to use makeup to play around with to enhance their looks when they're playing princess or mermaids. Now kids these days know more about skincare than their parents.
Oh my god, the kids have discovered skincare and are bullying people in Sephora. Let's get a grip. Hey guys, what's up? It's Imurgency and welcome back to my channel. Today we are here talking about Gen Alpha once again. Now, we've talked about Gen Alpha a couple of times on this channel, namely people realizing that Gen Alpha is on the internet, to young Gen Z and Gen Alpha being not the best students in school, and now we're seeing discourse online about Gen Alpha in reference to their general behavior in public, namely Sephora's, which is oddly specific, I know, but we'll get into that. It seems like people from across the country and across the internet all have stories to tell about their interactions with Gen Alpha in public spaces, and the general consensus that I've been seeing is Gen Alpha is just rude. Now we're going to talk about why that is and whether there's actual merit to these claims, as well as delving into who's to blame for all this. Is it Gen Alpha themselves? Is it Gen Z for publicizing it? Or is it Millennials for actually raising these kids? Y'all know I love to yap, so let's get into it. But first and foremost, welcome back to Imurgency, a little series that I run on the channel where we talk about all things Gen Z, or at least in this case, Gen Z adjacent, breaking down trends, discourse, and really anything having to do with the younger generations. And if you're new to the channel and like content like this, general commentary, TV and film content, tier lists, or anything of the above, then be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any content that comes out on the channel every single week. Also, make sure to leave a like on this video because it helps out with the YouTube algorithm, and follow me on my socials at Imurgency on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter to get a more behind the scenes vibe of me serving more fashion and lifestyle look, as well as genuine show reactions on TikTok. And last bit of promotion before we get into this, I recently opened up channel memberships, which give you early access to these videos every single week, as well as 2 additional show review videos a month. I just posted up a review for Everything Now exclusively for channel members, so if that interests you, then consider clicking the join button to become a member today and supporting the channel. But without further ado, let's actually talk about what's going on with Gen Alpha. So like I mentioned earlier, there's been an increase in discourse online on both TikTok and Twitter surrounding Gen Alpha and how they began to be nuisances and just generally disruptive in public places. For example, many people have told stories about their experiences seeing Gen Alpha in Sephora, in which these kids will be running around judging the other patrons, being generally disruptive, and oddly investing a lot in the Sephora skincare products. And this has become so prevalent that these shoppers have officially been dubbed Sephora kids. There are also accounts of Gen Alpha kids just being disruptive in other places like movie theaters, not really listening to authority, being generally disrespectful, and essentially a lot of the themes that we had seen be echoed by teachers during the whole Gen Alpha can't read gate have slowly been trickling down into retail and service workers, as apparently they've also been interacting with Gen Alpha in a public setting. Now you may be asking, why is this happening? Like, how is this a thing? And to that, I have a few possible answers. First and foremost, I want to tone set for this video because at the end of the day, Gen Alpha consists entirely of children at this point. The oldest Gen Alpha is no older than 14. So I'm not about to come on here and drag a bunch of children. I've seen a lot of people online do that, which is an interesting choice, but yeah, that's just not what we're gonna do here. What we are gonna talk about, since I do have a background in communications and did take a sociology class once, we're gonna first break down this notion of Gen Alpha being these rebellious, out of control children. This one article compares Gen Alpha kids to being like honey badgers. And if you happen to be one, a millennial, or two, just a really good post on like early 2010s memes and cultures, you know what a honey badger symbolizes. According to this article, honey badgers are renowned for their tenacity, often confronting any other species, regardless of if there's an escape option or the size of said animal. Basically meaning that Gen Alpha has no chillin', that they will rise to any occasion with confidence, which is quoted in this article as being a level that can sometimes be delusional. Raising these honey badger kids presents challenges due to their tendency to question authority and be very strong-willed, which in a sense explains the behavior that we're seeing in Sephora's across the globe. Gen Alpha is not willing to just comply to whatever. And while I'm not saying that that gives them an excuse to just be rude to people, it's just to say that they're not the devil's reincarnate. And I'd argue that a lot of the reason why Gen Alpha is the way it is because of the way that they've been raised. We've seen online the rise of millennial parenting strategies, namely one being the gentle parenting method, which in practice is done in good faith in order to validate the feelings of these millennials children as a form of retaliation for how millennials were treated by their parents and having their feelings and experiences invalidated constantly. But I feel like the flaws of extreme gentle parenting, or at least gentle parenting in the way that all feelings are validated equally, we end up in situations where these kids are growing up thinking that all of their feelings are valid, meaning that their entitlement to wanting something or wanting to do something supersedes the needs of other people around them trying to do something similar, which can create a hyper individualistic person if you think about it. If you grow up thinking that you're the shit and that you can do no wrong, then you're gonna think that way when you grow older. Now, I'm not saying this is the outcome for all kids of gentle parenting or all gentle parenting strategies, because like I said, there are levels to it, but this can definitely explain some of it. I feel like a lot of the backlash as well really does stem to like the demonization of like the younger generation. Like older generations for centuries have blamed younger generations for being mature, disrespectful, and rude. But at the end of the day, Gen Alpha, while not perfect by any means, personality-wise and attribute-wise, are not exponentially worse or exponentially more disrespectful than previous generations. I feel like they just have a different means to be observed and criticized and different tools at their disposal. No other generation can say that they grew up during an era where social media was as prevalent as it is, specifically with TikTok, where each instance of youth misbehavior can be documented and shared to millions. Like, you can't say that Gen Alpha is exponentially more rude or just more disrespectful, because I remember when millennials and Gen Xers on TV or in my personal life would criticize Gen Z growing up for being rude and for always talking back or always having an opinion, having no respect for authority or elders or traditional values. That sound familiar? Which is something that our generation has taken pride in. You remember that? The fundamentals behind these behaviors are essentially the same. Gen Z still very much has and had bad kids. We still had people that spoke up and spoke out against adults. It's just that for one, we're in an era of hypervisibility, so people are able to see these instances more often when it comes to Gen Alpha and young Gen Z. And the use of social media during this hypervisible era works two ways. It also impacts Gen Alpha, and likely why we're seeing an increase in kids going into Sephora. Like, on paper, that just doesn't sound like a place where a kid would want to be. But when you try to understand like what's actually going on here, it makes more sense. Like, when you think of Sephora, you typically think of things like makeup and skincare that are usually for adults or at least older teenagers. So why are 9 and 10-year-olds rushing to get Drunk Elephant skincare products from Sephora? Well, for one, kids have always wanted to try products that were for people that were meant to be older. I think kids trying on mom's makeup or dad's cologne, things like that. It just so happens that in today's day and age, with this generation, while yes, we still definitely do have a priority in makeup and the makeup industry is booming, the skincare industry is bigger than it's ever been. And we've seen an increase in adults, specifically in Gen Z and millennials, prioritizing skincare as like the main cosmetic that people can use. And also, skincare is a easier gateway into cosmetics and beauty and all that than makeup. And likely, thinking from a kid's perspective, would not be as bad or be confiscated by your parents for wearing as if you were to go out and buy some makeup and start wearing makeup out. Like, you can do your skincare routine and go outside as a kid and no one will really think anything of it, as opposed to you doing your makeup and then going outside as a kid and people being like, oh my God. But then you also need to consider what Gen Alpha is consuming nowadays. With the rise of short form content, with YouTube Shorts, Reels, and TikTok, they're also being exposed to other Gen Alpha and Gen Z influencers. People their age like Northwest or the Kardashian kids or other young influencers, as well as the older influencers who are all showing their get ready with me's, their skincare routines, and these form of lifestyles that are super attractive to Gen Alpha, and they want to copy and do that too. And that's not even insane to fathom, because remember, as Gen Z, we had a very similar era. Like, let's not forget that we were 12, 13, 14, 15, trying to go out and get the latest palette that an influencer put out, or follow a makeup trend that we saw in a YouTube video. Like, I remember those thick eyebrows that we'd be running around with in 2016, 2015. I didn't forget, we were still young. We were still teens and preteens at that age. Now, while yes, the concept of kids actually going out to buy skincare is very strange because they simply just don't need it. It's what's trending right now. It's what people want to buy. And if their favorite beauty or lifestyle influencer is telling them that this is a must-have, and this is how you can look max your glass skin and have a clean girl aesthetic with a soft girl life in just under 7 days. Like, remember, there are children, so they might go ahead and believe that. Shocker, influencers can sometimes influence. And that's how it's been, at least for like 2 generations now. Like, the only real difference here that I feel is how it's expressed, because we as Gen Z are now older and have the luxury of hindsight to being like, oh wow, yeah, like that was kind of dumb, and like, oh wow, these young people are kind of acting a mess, they haven't learned yet. No, They haven't learned yet. They're children. And that's another point I want to harp back on. Gen Alpha are children. So it's actually kind of fair to blame and ridicule them for how they act at this point in life. Of course, you could still hold the kid accountable for like actually being disruptive and rude and like hitting people and pushing people out the way. But again, a lot of that behavior is attributed to how they're raised, meaning the quality of their parenting and what they're exposed to. Like I remember seeing TikToks a while ago about how Gen Alpha boys were exhibiting a lot of problematic behaviors in school due to the consumption of red pill content that was going viral on Shorts and on TikTok. Like you remember that era when red pill content was really, really popular. You'd have these elementary schoolers talking about how men are superior to women. Like where do you get that? Like as a kid, that's not a thought that just inherently pops into your mind. Like you see that from somewhere, and they're seeing that from online content because they're allowed to. And of course, it's important to hold parents accountable for actually raising their kids. But at the same time, I understand like with the state of the world right now, parenting has become harder than ever because childcare is more expensive. Parents have to work longer hours away from their kids and attention is very divided, as well as social media protections for children being very, very, very poor. So even though there are these protections for kids or for kids settings online, it's really easy to either bypass those or to have content that gets through that isn't meant to get through. But at the end of the day, I guess you do choose to become a parent, so that is something that you kind of sign up for. But this is all to say that it is not on Gen Alpha entirely for how they're acting now. In fact, a lot of Gen Alpha are at an age where these behaviors can be modified, they can be changed, they can get better. It's just whether parents are willing to sit down and have conversations with their kids being like, hey, don't be a dick, or for them to learn from each other or from their Gen Z friends, family, etc. I wouldn't go as far to say that Gen Alpha is necessarily out of control. I feel like a lot of stuff with their education needs to be addressed because as we know, things are not looking great there. And of course, not condoning just general rudeness and overall disruption, but in terms of the generation's interests as well as their outspokenness, a lot of that, I feel like a lot of that is just the younger generation holding a mirror up to us as Gen Z and millennials, showing us aspects of our younger selves and culture because, I mean, they're kids, they had to learn it from somewhere. But yeah, those are my thoughts on that. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think about Gen Alpha terrorizing shoppers across the country? Do you agree or disagree that they're an issue themselves? I want to hear all of your thoughts down in the comments below. Again, if you're new to the channel, then definitely hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any content that I have coming out every single week. Leave a like on this video, follow me on my socials at Imurgency, and consider hitting the join button to get early and exclusive content, as well as just supporting the channel. But other than that, y'all, thank you so much for watching. I've been Imurgency, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.